You all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduced that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but you won't.
Joy Behar just got obliterated. And not with passion, but with precision. This wasn't a scream fest. It was an execution with a laugh track. Greg Gutfeld didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. He brought logic to a show that's been hoarding hysteria like it's a pension plan. Tyra stood silent, unmoved, like a statue watching pigeons argue about physics. Joy strutted into the culture war with borrowed talking points and wine mom confidence, and walked into a buzzsaw of satire sharpened on years of pent-up American exhaustion. What followed wasn't a clash of titans. It was a dismantling of daytime delusion by two guys who don't even need to show up in person to win the room.
All of a sudden, the ideology shifts because so many people are compromised by this very thing that we were talking about before. The very thing that they use to control the media in terms of the news, they use it to control the media in terms of late-night talk shows and monologues as well. It's the same influence because they're the same sponsors. The same people are spending the same money on the same networks. And it has an impact. If it affects your livelihood and affects your future and your ability to do this thing that you love doing, which is hosting a talk show, and you're doing it on a network that is paid for by that money, guess what? That affects...
Let's get this straight. This isn't about The View needing Trumpers. This is about The View needing adults. Grown-ups. People who can disagree without reaching for the nearest race card or moral panic button. Meghan McCain tried. Remember her? The lone voice of dissent, hunted on live television like she wandered into a vegan cult meeting wearing a MAGA hat. And now Joy Behar and her sisterhood of sanctimony are begging for a new Republican? Please. You don't want opposition. You want controlled opposition. A hologram of diversity that agrees with your every script. Fire the ideologues first. Fire the clappers who pretend they're co-hosts. Then we'll talk about balance.
This past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane. And he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah. Now, if you are of the left, that's fine. If you are of the right and happen to just say, hey, people used to wear blackface and nobody freaked out about it, you get fired.
Joy Behar used to be the queen of the clapter class. Those daytime devotees who confuse smugness for insight and think yelling louder wins the argument. But this time, she got hit by something she wasn't prepared for. Clarity. Gutfeld didn't scream. He sketched. Tyrus didn't argue. He watched. And as they laid bare the empty theater of Joy's political play-acting, the throne started to wobble. Not because they called her out, but because they didn't have to. They described the archetype. And suddenly, everyone saw her. Not the voice of resistance. Just the voice of privilege. Cosplaying oppression between commercial breaks.
It's sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic.
Let's not pretend there was a debate. Joy Behar wasn't ambushed, challenged, or engaged in any meaningful way. What happened was far more embarrassing. She got torched, off stage, dismantled like an abandoned prop from a sitcom no one watches anymore. Gutfeld didn't enter her domain. He didn't need to. He carved her ideology open from a separate studio using nothing but logic, sarcasm, and that smirk that drives liberals back to their yoga mats. Tyrus didn't even speak for most of it. He stared, and somehow that made it 10 times worse. Joy didn't lose a fight. She lost relevance, and never even knew it.
Elon Musk joking around about my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, your pronouns are ass and hole. Which is pretty funny. But then...
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that, and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about pronouns.
So Jimmy Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it too.
You ever notice how Greg Gutfeld doesn't even need to name names anymore? He just paints the silhouette and lets the audience do the rest. Sanctimonious, loud, disconnected from real life, allergic to nuance. If you're not picturing Joy Behar right now, you've probably never paid rent in your life. Gutfeld isn't doing stand-up anymore. He's conducting satire like a symphony. And in that moment, you realize, he's not trying to insult Joy. He's diagnosing a condition. And Tyrus? He's the bouncer making sure none of the symptoms interrupt the show.
Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos into the evening Academy Awards broadcast with Kimmel, and ABC elevating, the blackface loving Kimmel. They, at the same time, fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for trying to defend one contestant on, The Bachelorette for saying, gee, I know I went to this antebellum party, a couple years ago. I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it. And all he said was, are we judging her by today's standards, or are we judging her by, old standards, whatever. He was basically trying to say, are we being too hard on her? Got fired. Chris Harrison has to be fired by ABC. I don't know why, because he's not a committed leftist, because he's not out there more saying all the terrible things about Republicans that Jimmy Kimmel says. So this is them saying, we get it. We're an ally, right? And I guess maybe they're trying to make up with their racist past without ever...
Joy Behar says she doesn't know who Greg Gutfeld is. Sure. And I'm the Queen of Sweden. This woman's been caught reacting to his segments like he insulted her favorite wine label. But now that the punchlines sting, now it's, who's Greg Gutfeld? The denial is so thick you could serve it with a steak knife. Let's be honest. Joy's ego has a Google alert for anyone who calls her out, and it's been ringing off the hook. Pretending ignorance isn't fooling anyone. It's just her way of waving the white flag without admitting she lost. Again.
Hypocrisy is alive and well amongst these sanctimonious leftists. From Kimmel to De Niro to Stephanopoulos, they want you to believe they're better than you. More virtuous, more decent. But we all know the truth. They lie. They sin. They do the very things they accuse you of, and the things they say they would never do. Evil things. Like try to destroy people based on feigned outrage from which they spare their own side.
There are few things more devastating than silence in the middle of a clown show. And Tyrus understands that. While Joy's flailing her arms in rhetorical jazz hands, performing political theater for an audience that stopped clapping years ago, Tyrus just sits. Still. Impenetrable. His silence becomes its own brand of comedy. No words needed. No rebuttal necessary. Just a look. A stare. And in that moment, you realize Joy isn't debating a person. She's auditioning for a relevance that's already expired. Tyrus doesn't engage. He just lets her hang herself with her own applause lines.
They were saying that his tweet is transphobic.
Do you think in that case, do you think that's him or a writer? Can't you tell?
Jimmy Kimmel? No, it's him, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, he used to host The Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Yeah.
For he-he's and ha-ha's.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke.
Greg Gutfeld didn't go to war. He went to work. While Joy is out here leading the marching band of moral panic, Greg is sitting back with a clipboard, checking off cliches like he's grading freshman essays. She talks like the world is on fire and she's the only one with a garden hose. Meanwhile, Gutfeld is busy tossing water balloons of truth from the sidelines, watching her monologue combust into ash. It's not a fair fight. One side has comedy sharpened by truth. The other has pre-approved talking points and a studio audience trained to clap like seals. and they still lose.
We'll tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, for network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV. You plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million, averaging. Also equally horrible.
Tyrus doesn't do drama. He doesn't cry. He doesn't yell. He lets the moment burn around him like he's immune to stupidity. Joy came into this like it was a courtroom, and she brought 17 lawyers made of feelings. But Tyrus? He brought a chair. And a stare. And it worked. She's lobbing rhetorical grenades, and he's dodging them by standing still. You can't beat someone who refuses to play your game. And that's what Joy still hasn't figured out. She's fighting with slogans. He's armed with silence.
They want to shut me down on being on McAfee. They want to shut me up from...
Well, that was the Kimmel thing, right?
Well, no.
Did you ever talk to that dude? Have you ever talked to him?
I've been on the show.
Yeah?
Years ago, yeah.
Would you ever have a conversation with him in person?
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, they wanted me to be on the show in the summertime after I got traded.
Really?
There, obviously been some things that he had said about me that made me go, I don't know if I want to do that.
Here's the real tragedy. Joy Behar thought she was the star. She thought she was the main event, the intellectual, the wisecracking elder stateswoman of liberal feminism. But Gutfeld and Tyrus showed up, without showing up, and proved she was just background noise. Tyrus gave her that look. That heavy, haunting, dad's not mad he's disappointed stare. The kind of look that ends arguments and careers. It was the roast equivalent of watching someone try to fight their own reflection. And Joy. She never even realized she lost.
His questions about whether any of this is true. I mean, in every job I've ever worked, I've had people who would jump through brick walls for me, and I can be a tough boss. I'm not an asshole, but I'll say, that was a shitty packet. We need to do better. That was not okay. And my team loves me, and I love my team because we are all about putting out great work product. And I'm quick to compliment too. What did he say? He basically said, are you okay? Seriously, do you need help? That's causing people to lose their hair? People need to toughen up. Your workplace is not your Nana's lap.
You want to know the level of roast we're talking about here? Gutfeld didn't say her name. He just described her. Middle-aged rage meets faux rebel energy. Air-conditioned radicalism masked as bravery. She could have been any host on The View, but we all knew who he meant. And when the camera cut to Tyrus, he didn't laugh. He didn't smirk. He just nodded like a man who's seen too many reruns of the same bad play. The satire hit so hard, it left a crater in daytime television, and Joy's name wasn't even carved into the shrapnel.
Oh, I don't think that conversation is a conversation that should be held in front of an audience in 5-minute chunks, like they do on television.
Yeah.
That's a conversation that you have to let air out. I want to know why you think the way you think. Him, sit down with Jimmy. Why do you think the way you think? Why would you think that it's okay to say that it's a real simple thing? The people that have been vaccinated, you treat them. And the people that took horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy. Really? Is that really?
What Joy doesn't understand is this. Being ignored is worse than being insulted. Insults can be answered. Ignorance. That's exile. Gutfeld and Tyrus didn't roast her to her face. They didn't need to. They let her perform her greatest hits on loop, while they rewrote the entire comedy script from another building. It was a cultural hit job without fingerprints. The View is out here still thinking it's leading the resistance. Meanwhile, Gutfeld and Tyrus have already skipped to the epilogue. And it's hilarious.
In the day when I was on the prime time of Fox and you were on the prime time of CNN, a couple of hours after our shows ended, late night comics would come on, and they occasionally would make us laugh, Pierce. As you know, they've abandoned that game now, and they're just political operatives out there. Look at this.
Hey there. How are you doing? If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go. for healthcare, for climate.
Just get over yourselves. Honestly, it's so pathetic.
If Joy Behar was expecting a battle, she should have packed a better argument. She wanted a fight, but what she got was a slow-motion implosion narrated by two guys who don't even take her seriously enough to show up. There was no debate, no back and forth, just satire, silence, and the slow crawl of recognition that she's not the queen of anything. Not comedy. Not commentary. Not culture. She's a leftover from a time when daytime television thought applause was evidence. And now even the echo is fading.